And coming up next week, PBS will be simulcasting the debate between the vice presidential candidates on Tuesday, October 1st at 9 p.m. Now, just before that debate, PBS is premiering a new American experience called The American Vice President. The documentary explores the little-known story of the second highest office in the land, tracing its evolution from a constitutional afterthought to a position of political consequence, especially during the period between 1963 and 1974, when a grief-stricken and then scandal-plagued nation was forced to clarify the role of the vice president, including the first time the 25th Amendment was used. The American Vice President is airing at 8 p.m. on Tuesday, October 1st. There have only been a few dozen vice presidents in our nation's history, but one of them was born and raised here in the North Country, in the village of Malone. William A. Wheeler was a teacher who studied law and became a district attorney and was then elected to the New York State Assembly, State Senate, and U.S. House of Representatives. After 5 terms in Congress, he was chosen to be Rutherford B. Hayes' running mate and served as the 19th Vice President of the United States from 1877 to 1881. He lived in this home on Elm Street in Malone that is now the Elks Lodge, and Wheeler's gravesite is in Morningside Cemetery in the village of Malone. And joining us now to talk a little more about Vice President William A. Wheeler is Josh Dubbert, who is a historian at the Rutherford B. Hayes Presidential Library and Museums in Fremont, Ohio. Josh, thank you very much for taking the time to be with us. Welcome.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Do we know why Rutherford B. Hayes chose William Wheeler to be his vice president?
Well, Hayes didn't actually choose him. That was the Republican convention, really spurred by General Philip Sheridan. Hayes had been nominated by the New York delegation for president, and so they were sort of paying them back in a way by nominating Wheeler. And really, Hayes didn't know Wheeler before he became his nominee, which I think is kind of interesting.
So this is coming right after the Civil War. For Hayes and for Wheeler running the United States, how difficult was it? How challenging in those years coming right on the heels of the Civil War?
Well, this is a real tumultuous time in American history, even though you think the war is over, that maybe the struggle is over, that things are starting to recover. Reconstruction is being ended by Grant slowly because he's withdrawing troops from the South consistently. There's also the financial panic of 1873 that's going on, that's spurred by some European collapses that trickle down into the railroads here. And also you have about 100 banks failing nationally. So this is a major financial situation that really goes for about 4 years down into the Hayes presidency.
A lot of historians say that Wheeler was an honorable, although unknown congressman from New York. Did that turn out to be a plus for him? Were they looking for somebody who was of good character, who didn't have any sort of political baggage or scandal attached to him to come to the White House and to work with Hayes?
Yeah, I mean, both Wheeler and Hayes have this reputation as being really honorable men, free from scandal. This is especially attractive to people, coming out of the Grant administration that was just so full of scandal. I mean, it's just rife with scandal, really. And so, Hayes is known for his moderate views on issues, also his reputation as a conciliator. So he becomes sort of this compromise candidate. And, really Wheeler, for his part, he's known as a highly ethical man. But really, I think the central reason that he's chosen is because he's the New York, I should say really the eastern portion of the nation, being that, New York is in the east and Hayes is in the Midwest in Ohio, and Ohio being, of course, a very important state. So they're looking at it sort of as a balanced ticket.
How did they get along? How did Hayes and Wheeler get along? How did they work together?
They were very friendly. It was a very amicable relationship. Hayes thought that he was a very respectable man, Wheeler was. And, Wheeler, as vice presidents go, he didn't have a whole lot of say in the administration. He was sort of on the side, but they were very friendly. As far as the family is kind of interesting. The family kind of takes Wheeler under their wing, the Hayes family does, because Wheeler's wife had died recently, so he's recently widowed. And so the family, sort of feels bad for him, and they invite him into the social circles. And there are a couple of interesting little anecdotes I can tell. One is this famous fishing trip that Wheeler took Lucy and the Hayes' only daughter, Fannie Hayes, on into the Adirondacks in 1878. And this is in May, and Lucy catches this 15-pound salmon trout, which everyone's just so amazed by. And so Wheeler kind of sends this back with pride to the White House, to Rutherford, and they all dine on it, including future President Garfield. So the cabinet, all these people are coming to dine on Lucy's fish. And so later on, Lucy thanks him for sort of this wild, fun trip that they had.
You mentioned what was happening in the South. You also mentioned economically what was happening at the time. What's their legacy? Were they able to accomplish much as a team in the White House?
Again, Wheeler is not highly involved with a lot of what's going on with Hayes's policies. And as far as how he's working with Hayes to sort of fix some of the problems in the nation, it just isn't a whole lot of evidence about how he's part of that. As far as their legacy, I mean, Wheeler in particular, I'd have to say his biggest legacy is really just being on the same ticket as Hayes during one of the most highly contested elections in American history. I think it's worth saying that he is an anti-slavery, ardent anti-slavery advocate. He's also a 5-term congressman.
And did Wheeler stay with him his entire time in the White House? Stay with Hayes?
He did. So the Hayes made a campaign promise, actually, that he would only serve one term in office. This goes back to his July 8th, 1876 speech for the Republican convention. And yes, Wheeler did stay with him all 4 years. And like I said, they got along very well, and they were close. The family was close with him.
And like so many vice presidents, you always wonder, did he ever give any indication that he may have had ambition to run for president himself?
There's no record that I know of that he wanted to in any way run for president. He's not obviously nominated in any way. His name isn't really up for running or for the vice presidency. It sounds like he just wanted to really retire. And that's what he does in 1881 after the presidency. He decides that he wants to go back to Malone. And, he was rather sickly, William was, for a lot of his life, especially going into his later years. As far as I know, there is no evidence that he had any ambitions of being president. And maybe, again, grief plays him to this with his wife having died while he was, just before he assumes the vice presidency.
Yeah. And then you mentioned he came back home to Malone, and it was only a few years after that he died.
That's correct. 1887. Yeah, not a very long life after that, unfortunately.
Josh Dubbert, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us this afternoon. We appreciate it.
Oh, it's been a pleasure. Thanks for having me.